What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another post-game show here on Mets Central. This is Mets Fan Reaction Game 152, where the New York Mets dropped the second game of this three-game set to the San Diego Padres by a final score of 7-4. First of all, before we start this post-game show and we get into the finer details of this game, firstly, of course, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe on the channel. We greatly appreciate your support here on Match Central, and we keep on feeding you guys content throughout the rest of the regular season and even towards the future in later seasons. And also hit the notification bell as well to let you guys know anytime we upload a video or go live on the channel. But firstly, I also do want to apologize for this post-game show starting a little bit late. We're just about to hit midnight here on the East Coast. Both me and Evan were at the game. So, yeah, we obviously, the game ended around, later because it was a fairly longer game. I believe it was over 3 hours or just about 3 hours. And of course, we had to drive home, take care of some other stuff. But now I'm here, sitting here, and about to discuss and break this game down with you guys here on YouTube. So, yeah, look, not a great performance by the Mets tonight. Not a great performance, and the place where you mainly want to start to break and explain why the Mets didn't play good today, David Peterson. David Peterson had a very poor outing. And listen, this is not just a one-off for David Peterson anymore. This is now multiple starts in a row that David Peterson, whenever he has been called upon to be the quote-unquote best veteran on this quote-unquote pitching staff, he has been called upon many times. And listen, to be honest and to be fair with David Peterson, when you take away this stretch of baseball that David Peterson's played, he's actually had a pretty good season. The problem is, which we saw similarly in 2022, where, yes, David Peterson did have a very good year that year, specifically more in the beginning of the year, but once it got down to crunch time, when the team had to start to rely more on him, when he had to go out there and eat big innings and pitch in these bigger games, he started to fumble. And he started to shrink to just the size of the occasion. And then, and just also maybe he just can't handle this amount of momentum of, these pressurized situations of these games. Because let's be honest, and the Mets have been in this state for a while. The Mets are in a spot right now where almost every single game feels like a must win. And this is why dropping the second game of the series, it's just, it's a bit deflating to me personally from a fan's perspective. Obviously, from a player's point of view, you can't be, down by this game. You can't allow this loss to mess with you and damage you psychologically, because you still have to go out tomorrow and win another game. And because they dropped the second game of the series, and right now they're tied 1-1 so far in this three-game set. I know in the grand scheme of things, people might not say tomorrow is a must-win game. To me, though, because if you guys recall back when, when a couple days ago when me and Evan did the podcast, which, we went over the last series against the Texas Rangers and we previewed the San Diego Padres series, we obviously stated that, there was 4 more series left in this regular season, right? You had this 3-game set against San Diego at Citi Field. You had another 3-game set, which could potentially be the final 3 games played at Citi Field against the Washington Nationals. And then you go out to Chicago for a 3-game set. And then you finish out the season in Miami for a 3-game set. And pretty much for me, I felt that in order for the Mets, for me at least, for me to feel comfortable about them making the playoffs, I said that they had to go out there and win every single series. And listen, tomorrow maybe they could lose this series and they could still get into the playoffs. That is certainly a possibility. But for me, in order for me to feel comfortable about this team making the playoffs, I feel that tomorrow's a must-win game. And they have to go out and win this series. And then obviously we'll go on and then focus on the Washington National series. But also the second reason why I wanted them to win this second game, I wanted them to take the pressure off Jonathan. Because look, Jonathan, at the end of the day, he's a 22-year-old kid. I believe he's about to make his, 4th start in the major leagues. And the fact that he's going to have all this pressure on him right now in pretty much like what I said is kind of like a must-win game, I do think that's kind of unfair on the kid. And listen, he's also going to face a very good San Diego Padres lineup. Obviously, of consistent guys like, Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, Jay Cronenworth, Ramon Laureano, and other guys like that. It is a very deep lineup. And listen, I get that Jonah Tong, he is considered one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. He was, the best Mets pitching or the Mets' best pitching prospect per se. Especially going through this season and see how quickly he rose up the ranks. But to me, it's kind of unfair now to put all this pressure on Jonah Tong. But listen, tomorrow, obviously, it didn't work out that way because they obviously dropped the second game of the series. But like I said, tomorrow it's kind of a must-win game. And listen, for Jonah Tong, I get it. It's a tough scenario for him, but he has to go out there. He obviously has to, forget about the last start against the Rangers. Throw that out completely and just wipe everything away. You got a fresh, clean slate. I think tomorrow for Jonah Tong, he just has to go out there, refocused, trust in his stuff, trust in his fastball, trust in the secondary stuff. And I think, he'll be, I'm not saying that he's going to dominate this Padres lineup, but I think he'll look a lot more competent and a lot more sharper than what we saw, in the Cincinnati Red start and, more specifically the Texas Rangers start where, he didn't even get out of the first inning and he led, I believe, 6 runs in that first inning. But yeah, going back to this game though, like what I talked about before, David Peterson did not have a great start whatsoever. And look, obviously, when you look at the box score, the first 2 innings, you see that, he gave up runs in each of the first 2 innings. And look, I think part of that was more. I don't want to put too much blame on Peterson in those first couple of innings. Obviously, he has to be better, but a lot of the runs or the 2 runs that he gave up, and a couple of the hits that he was giving up, they were mostly coming on soft contact. I think the only ball per se that the Padres were able to hit hard off of him in the first 3 innings was that Fernando Tatis Jr. Leadoff single in the first inning, which led up the game. Apart from that, I mean, through the first 4 innings, Peterson was actually, I don't want to say he was great, but he was okay. He was salvageable. My biggest problem with David Peterson in this start, though, specifically was the lack of swing and miss stuff. Because even, me and Evan were talking about it from the stands, where we were watching the game. You could tell easily. And a lot of the times because obviously when we talk about David Peterson and we talk about his best starts, obviously everyone knows that David Peterson, I think, firstly, is a ground ball pitcher and a soft contact pitcher. And look, he's going to get the majority of his outs that way, which I have no problem. But in the starts this year where you've seen David Peterson be really dominant and you've seen him go 8-7 innings consistently, part of it, sure, he's getting the ground ball outs, he's getting the soft contact outs, but he also has a swing and miss stuff going. And this was one of the things that really hurt him in the start. He did not have a lot of swing and miss stuff on his pitches at all today. Because when you look at the breakdown of Baseball Savant, right? He obviously threw 5 pitches today. In total, 85 pitches through 5 innings. Threw the sinker, changeup, slider, curveball, 4-seamer, and in total, he only got 1 whiff on the sinker, 1 whiff on the changeup, 2 whiffs on the sliders. So 4 whiffs on 85 pitches. I'm sorry, to me, that is just not good enough, and that's not going to cut it. Because, and especially with this Padres team, they do have a decent lineup. They do have a deep lineup. If they make contact with your stuff, they're going to be able to find these little gaps. They're going to be able to have these little blue hits, which, are able to drive in 2 runs, which they did in the first inning. And then obviously, as we break down this game, we'll get to the 5th inning where David Peterson pretty much collapsed from there. And, he just had a terrible inning. And, pretty much that is where the Mets lost this game. On the offensive side, look, the Mets weren't terrible, but they also weren't great offensively. Obviously, they scored the 4 runs, courtesy of 4 solo home runs, which, if you're going to hit a home runs, you obviously want them to be multi-run home runs. You just don't want them to be 4 solo home runs. And I mean, pretty much other than those 4 solo home runs, the Mets did not really generate much offensively. I mean, they did have a couple chances later on in the game. After Francisco Alvarez ends up hitting a solo home run in the 7th inning, Cedric Mullins does end up getting on base. He does end up stealing second base as well in that inning. Mets unfortunately can't bring him in, and the Mets are actually pretty close to tying up this game as well, which we'll get into the game. We'll talk about that more as we deep dive into the game. And then they had a couple chances in the 9th inning because, of course, the Mets naturally they have to do this tease in the late innings, and still the Mets are the only team this year that whenever they went into the 9th inning trailing in the game, they have not won a game. And I believe what they're and I believe it's something over 0-56 like that. If I'm wrong about that, then I'm sorry. Obviously, I'll try to look it up pretty quickly, but I believe it's some crazy stat like that. But I mean, yeah, listen, like I said, tomorrow it's it's a must-win game. It's a must-win game without it being technically a must-win game because obviously, if the Mets still lose, they obviously still have games to play. It's not like they're going home, but or yeah, it's even worse. It's 0-65 trailing in the ninth inning. So yeah, it's not good enough, especially when you consider it's like when me and Evan always talk about here on the podcast. Especially, when you just go back a year ago and see how much magic that team had from last year, the 2024 team, and see how many, games they won where, they came back late in these games. The fact that this team has lacked that ability, it's kind of sad, and it's also a little bit it's also a little bit concerning because listen, there's going to be some points in the playoffs which, if the Mets do make the playoffs, there's going to be some points where, potentially the Mets are going to have to come back late and rally from these games. And, if they can't do this in the regular season, do you really trust them to do it come postseason time? To be honest, sitting here and, answering that truthfully, no, I don't see that being the case. But anyway, guys, obviously, that was my quick little rant and little recap of basically, of what went wrong and what went right in this game. Obviously, now we're going to go into the actual breakdown of this game. So pitching for the Mets, obviously David Peterson, and then pitching for the San Diego Padres was Nick Pivetta. As I mentioned before, Fernando Tatis ends up leading off this game with a leadoff single. Luis Arraez then ends up walking. Manny Machado would then ground out. And as a result of that, Fernando Tatis and Luis Arraez would move up bases, so it would be second and third with one out. Gavin Sheets would then hit a sacrifice fly to put the Padres up 1-0. Thankfully, no more damage, though, will be done in this inning as Ramon Laureano will ground out to end that inning. We then move on to the bottom of the first. Francisco Lindor would start off that inning with a pop-out. Juan Soto then lines out to Jackson Merrill. And then Pete Alonso, who's now homered in 3 straight games, he hit his 36th home run of the season, which was just a complete bomb and a complete no-doubter as it came off the bat. And he ends up hitting that ball to left field, so he ties up the game at 1-1. And then Brandon Nimmo pops out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the second. Jackson Merrill leads off that inning with a single. Jose Iglesias grounds out. Jay Cronenworth hits a single to put the Padres up 2-1 as Jackson Merrill comes around to score. And then Elias Diaz would ground into an inning-ending double play. So thankfully, no more damage will be done there. But the Padres do get out of that inning with a 2-1 lead. And it was also nice to see Jose Iglesias in this game. Obviously, the Mets did give him the nice tribute video yesterday, but he didn't play yesterday. So he played in this game. Obviously, the crowd gave him a nice little hand. Obviously, when he was first introduced in the pregame lineups, and then obviously the first time he came to the plate. So yeah, nice little standing ovation there for Jose Iglesias because, we're always thankful for him and for what he provided for the team last year. But then moving on to the bottom of the second, Starling Marte leads off the inning with a strikeout. Jeff McNeil lines out. Brett Beatty would then hit a double. Unfortunately, the Mets could not score, though, as Francisco Alvarez would line out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the third. Fernando Tatis and Luis Arraez both ground out. Manny Machado will hit a single. Thankfully, no damage will be done this inning, though, as Gavin Sheets would pop out. Moving on to the bottom of the third, Cedric Mullins strikes out. Francisco Lindor would then hit a single. Unfortunately, though, the Mets could not drive him in, though, as Juan Soto flies out, and then Pete Alonso strikes out to end this inning. We then move on to the top of the fourth. A nice 1-2-3 inning here by David Peterson as he gets Laureano to line out. Merrill flies out, and Jose Iglesias strikes out. We then move on to the bottom of the fourth. Brandon Nimmo will lead off the inning with a strikeout, but then Starling Marte comes up to the plate, and again, similar to the Pete home run, no doubter off the bat. He drives that ball to left field as the Mets tie up this game 2-2, and they're right back in this ball game. Unfortunately, though, the Mets could not get any more runs in this inning, though. Jeff McNeil flies out. Brett Beatty would hit a single, and Francisco Alvarez would fly out to end the inning. Now we move on to the top of the fifth, and this is where David Peterson fell apart because Peterson, obviously, Jake Cronenworth leads off this inning. Peterson has him in a 2-2 count, and what is the one thing we always say with starting or with pitchers in general? When you have a 2-strike count, you cannot hit the opposing batter. You cannot give them a free base. And in this example, Peterson had Cronenworth 2-2, hits him. He gets on first base. Elias Diaz then hits a sacrifice bunt, or he grounds it out into a sacrifice bunt. So Cronenworth moves over to second base. Fernando Tatis Jr. would then walk. Luis Ariz would then hit a bunt single, which pissed me off. And Luis Ariz just in general pisses me off because he's just a pest of a player. He's annoying. So bases loaded, 1 out, and Manny Machado comes up to the plate. And for me, Peterson gets Machado to a 3-2 count. And for me, before Peterson threw that 3-2 pitch, to me, from where me and Evan were sitting in the stands, we were like, you have to go out and you have to go out, or you have to go out and you have to go and attack Manny Machado. You cannot try to walk him. You can't be scared. And to me, you also couldn't throw a breaking ball in that situation. To me, if you want to get Manny Machado in that situation, you had to pump back and you had to just try to blow a fastball right by him. And unfortunately, Peterson on a 3-2 count, not necessarily hangs a curveball, but he kind of puts the curveball in a poor location. And Manny Machado is a good low zone hitter. And off the bat, no doubter, Machado hits a grand slam to left field, and right away, Padres up 6-2. And pretty much right from there, I mean, the game technically wasn't over, but I didn't feel good about the Mets coming back in this situation. Obviously, looking from the score that I put up here on the title, the Mets obviously didn't come back in this game, and they lost 7-4. But Peterson then after that grand slam doesn't allow any more runs as Gavin Sheets flies out, Ramon Laureano walks, and then Jackson Merrill would fly to end that inning. We then move on to the bottom of the fifth. Cedric Mullins strikes out. Francisco Lindor ground out. Then with 2 outs, Juan Soto comes up to the plate. He ends up hitting a solo home run to right field to cut the lead down to 6-3. His 41st home run of the season, which ties his career high, which he set last year with the Yankees. So one more home run, and Soto could potentially, have a new personal record in terms of home runs at 62. And look, 42 home runs or even more. He's at 99 RBIs right now. I mean, in a down year, sounds pretty good. That does sound pretty good. But after that, Pete Alonso singles. There would then be a pitching change as Adrian Morjon comes in to replace Nick Pivetta, and Brandon Nimmo would strike out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the sixth. Dom Hamill comes in to replace David Peterson, and this was one of the things that pissed me off with this game, because you guys all know how me and Evan, we have difficulties understanding, and we have a lot of dislikes with how Carlos Mendoza handles his bullpen per se. And let's not forget, this is the Mets bullpen had 2 days off, because after the Rangers series, they obviously had the day off on Monday, and then in yesterday's game on Tuesday, or now that it's Thursday, but 2 nights ago, in that first game of the Padres series, obviously you had Clay Holmes and you had Sean Manaea have that piggyback game where they were able to, both, or obviously Holmes goes 4 innings and Manaea closes out that game by going the final 5 innings. So you didn't have any relievers used for the last 2 games. You had a fresh new bullpen. And listen, I get at that time you're losing, but Carlos Mendoza has said that he manages these games to win in these situations. And also, let's not forget, like I said before, the Mets are in a spot where they pretty much almost have to win every single game. So you don't have any room to mess around. If the game is close enough, you have to use your best bullpen arms. And, when I saw guys like Dom Hamill start to warm up, and I saw guys like Ryan Stanek start to warm up, before the 6th inning, I'm like, Mendy, really? Like, what are we doing here? But again, it's like, it's easy to get frustrated, with these decisions that Mendoza makes. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like I was discussing this with Evan at the game. It's like, you're frustrated with these decisions, but it's like they're pretty much expected. They're pretty much expected. And even I joked around to Evan before the game even started, when we were driving to Citi Field. I'm like, the Mets just had 2 days off or 2 days in a row where the bullpen was not used. And I'm like, watch Ryan Stanek be the first guy out of this bullpen. Now, he wasn't the first guy out of this bullpen because Dom Hamill ended up coming out and pitching in this game. But Stanek ended up pitching in this game. And, we'll obviously talk about him a little bit more. But we move on to the top of the 6th. And just quickly to flash Peterson's final pitching line. Peterson ends up going 5 innings, gives up 6 hits, 6 runs, 6 earned runs, 3 walks, 1 Ks, 1 home run, that being the grand slam to Manny Machado, and his season ERA shoots up to a 3.98 ERA. I mean, pretty much the same what I talked about with Pearson before. It's just, especially in these games where you need your veteran pitchers to step up. And I know that Minaya did, and I know that Clay Holmes did yesterday in the piggyback game in the first game of the series. But you're expecting a guy like David Pearson to go out there and give you some sort of length and at least keep the Mets in this game. And he didn't do that. And again, this looks very similar to what we saw in 2022, where Pearson looked good at the start of the year, but once we got to September, once the games got close and once they became a lot more meaningful, you start to see David Pearson tail off. And listen, obviously there's going to be discussion about, certain playoff rotations, and obviously the Mets have to get there in the first place. But if the Mets make the playoffs and, obviously, if they get in, they're going to have to play the 3-game wild card. I don't think you could start David Pearson in a 3-game wild card. I don't think you are able to. I mean, obviously, if the Mets do, Nolan McLean is obviously the game 1 starter, no doubt about that. He's just been fantastic ever since the Mets called him up. You have to consider using the piggyback option of Clay Holmes and Sean Manaea. And then the third game, I don't know. Do you use Brandon Sproat? Do you feel comfortable with using David Peterson? Do you maybe tag team another game in that wild card series, and maybe do you do a combination of Senga Sproat or Senga Tong or Tong and Sproat? Like I have no. Obviously, listen, the Mets still have to get there, and again, it's not a guarantee that they're going to get there. But with David Pearson just showing so much struggles, in these last couple games, it's like, again, you can't trust them if the Mets do end up making the wild card. You can't trust them to make a start. But anyway, guys, just continue on with the post game breakdown. Don Hamill comes in to replace Peterson. Jose Iglesias grounds out. Jay Cronenworth flies out. Elias Diaz would then be hit by a pitch. Fernando Tatis would then hit a single. Otherwise, would then hit a single. It looked like the Padres were going to score a run here, but Elias Diaz, who was rounding third base, he ends up slowing down, and Juan Soto makes a very good play in right field, and he throws out Luis Arias, who tried to stretch out a single into a double. He gets thrown out at second base, and he gets tagged out before Elias Diaz crosses the plate for that run to register, which would have been the 7th run of the game. So a big mistake there by the Padres. Obviously, it could have come back to bit them if the Mets ended up winning this game and they came back. Obviously, they didn't, so it didn't matter. But a huge mess up there by Elias Diaz. That's something that cannot happen. And let me tell you something. If one of our players did that, I'd be all over them, because that is unacceptable. You have to hustle on every single play. We then move on to the bottom of the 6th. Mets get nothing going there. We then move on to the top of the 7th. Manny Machado would hit a leadoff single. Gregory Soto would then come in to replace Dom Hamill. He would get Gavin Cheese to strike out. Ramon Laureano would then hit a single. Jackson Merrill would strike out. There would then be a stolen base. Jose Iglesias would then walk, so the base would be loaded. Thankfully, no damage would be done there, as Jay Cronenworth would ground out to end that inning. We then move on to the bottom of the 7th. Jeremiah Estrada comes in to replace Adrian Morahone. Francisco Alvarez would end up hitting a home run. There would have to be an umpire review, because obviously the ball ended up hitting the top of the wall, and they weren't sure if the ball went out because it ended up coming back in play, but they weren't sure, initially if the ball, went over and then came back out. But the umpires checked it over. They confirmed it. Francisco Alvarez did hit a home run. So, and again, a solo home run. So that cuts the Padres down to 6-4. Cedric Mullins with then a walk, which I had a problem with Cedric Mullins. And listen, I get he got on base in that situation, but I had a problem with him taking that at bat, just because you're down late in this game. And again, I'm going to state it again. The Mets are in a spot where they have to win these games. To me, if I was managing this game, Mark Vientos, for me, after Alvarez hits that home run, he would have grabbed the bat for me, and he would have ended up hitting, and he would have hit for Cedric Mullins. Obviously, that would have happened later in the game, but for me, I would have done it even in this situation. But Mullins ends up walking. Francisco Lindor pops out. There would then be a pitching change. Mason Miller comes in to replace Jeremiah Estrada. Cedric Mullins steals second base. Juan Soto then strikes out, and this is where Juan Soto got a bit unlucky, because he ends up hitting a ball down the left field line. And from me, where me and Evan were sitting, when that ball landed, we didn't think that ball was even close to being fair. We thought it was pretty much, fairly conclusional. It was a foul ball. But to be fair, looking at the replay, and clearly it was a foul ball, but it was a lot closer than I initially anticipated. I mean, it was very close to that ball is very close to hitting off the left field foul pole, and very easily this game could have been tied up at 6. But unfortunately, sometimes it's a game of inches, and then Juan Soto then kind of follows up with a poor pitch decider as what's it called, Mason Miller ends up striking him out and he ends up taking a slider looking to strike out. And then Pete Alonso would strike out to end that inning. So the Mets could not score any more runs there. Top of the 8th, Ryan Helsley comes in to replace Gregory Soto. And surprisingly, good inning of work there by Ryan Helsley. Look, did he have a good inning of work? Yes. Do I still trust him to put him out and throw him into a high leverage spot? Absolutely not. But he gets Elias Diaz to fly out. Fernando Tatis walks. He would then be picked off trying to steal second base. And then Luis Arraez flies out to end the inning. We then move on to the bottom of the 8th. The Mets could not get anything going that inning. We then move on to the top of the 9th. Ryan Stanek comes in to replace Ryan Helsley because, of course, it is Carlos Mendoza. He has a love affair with Ryan Stanek, and of course, he has to pitch. And it ends up biting the Mets because Manny Machado lines out. Gavin Sheets strikes out. Ramon Laureano then ends up hitting a solo home run to left field to extend the Padres lead to 7-4. Jackson Merrill then singles, but Stanek was able to get out of that inning as Jose Iglesias would ground out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the 9th, or the bottom of the 9th, sorry. Robert Suarez comes in to replace Mason Miller. Brett Beatty would lead off that inning with a single, and Brett Beatty had a very good night at the plate today. Francisco Alvarez would then ground out. Brett Beatty, though, would be able to move to second base. And this is where I said Cedric Mullin comes up in the spot again, but Mendy makes the smart decision, ends up pinch hitting Mark Vientos there, and Vientos ends up hitting a soft ground ball to third base. Manny Machado scoops it up, throws him out at first base, and this is one of those situations where if this was probably any other player on this Mets team, or if this was any other third baseman in the league, they probably end up beating out that ground ball to first base. But unfortunately, Mark Vientos, one of the skinniest athletes I've ever seen. Unfortunately, though, he's also one of the slowest athletes I've ever seen also. So he is unable to beat out that ground ball. Francisco Lindor that walk. So you have first and second here with 2 outs. Juan Soto comes up to the plate, and unfortunately, Soto could not come through as he lines out sharply to Robert Suarez, and he ends up throwing him out to Luis Arraez at first base, and that would end the ball game there. As I said before, 7-4 win for the San Diego Padres. So, like I mentioned before at the top, main reason the Mets lost this game, their veteran pitchers did not perform. David Pearson, obviously, very bad start, only goes 5 innings, gives up the 6 runs with the 4-run grand slam implosion in the 5th inning. And then, Ryan Stanek comes in the 9th inning, obviously gives up a solo home run because that's what Ryan Stanek does. He does not get shutout innings, and he gives up runs. That is just what he does. But for some reason, Carlos Mendoza just loves him and keeps throwing him out there. And then the offense, 4 solo home runs, obviously, those being Pete, Marte, Juan Soto, and Francisco Alvarez, but Mets could not get anything going. And like I said, they had chance later on in the game, specifically that chance in the bottom of the 9th, but they just couldn't come through. And yeah, Mets lose this game. Series all tied up at 1. And like I said before, tomorrow it's a must-win game. You have to go out there and you win this series. And look, like I said before, it's a lot of pressure tomorrow on Jonah Tong, but hopefully, like I said, he rebounds. He throws out whatever happened in those Cincinnati Red games and the Texas Ranger games, and hopefully he's able to mentally reset. And he goes out there, he gives the Mets a strong pitching performance, and he's able to keep it in the game. But then, for the Padres tomorrow, Randy Vasquez is going for them tomorrow, and he's had a pretty respectable year, 3.72 ERA with a 1.35 WHIP. So, listen, he's a solid pitcher, but this is offense that's being paid a lot of money, so they need to show up and they need to perform. But yeah, anyway, guys, before I get out of here, just going to go through your guys' comments pretty quickly, and then obviously, we'll wrap it up because it is late here. Obviously, we have the game tomorrow at 1:10 p.m. But anyway, guys, Adorable Snowflake, what is going on? I don't believe I've seen you here in the comment section, so welcome to the show. Welcome to the channel. We always appreciate new subscribers here. But once this team falls behind, it's basically game over. I mean, yeah, once because obviously the Mets fell behind twice in the game early, because obviously in the first inning they gave up a run to the Padres, and then the second inning they ended up giving up another run to the Padres. But they were both able to answer back on those on those runs per se due to the Pete Alonso solo shot and then the Starling Marte solo shot. But once Machado hit that grand slam, I just didn't feel good about them winning this game. And listen, like I said, they made it close. They had chances, but they didn't take advantage of those chances. And, that's basically the story of this team. They've had plenty of chances to come back late in these games, but they just don't come through with those clutch hits a lot of the times. Brent White, what is going on? Brent, I don't believe I've seen you here before either. If not, I'm mistaken. Then I apologize. But again, like Snowflake, if you are new to the channel and if you are new to the show, welcome. Again, we greatly appreciate new subscribers here on the show. But how is it possible that Mendoza did not have somebody ready to bail Peterson out? That cost them the game. I mean, look, to be fair to Mendoza at that point, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have had anyone warming up prior to the fifth inning, because at that point, like I said, other than the 2 runs that Peterson gave up in the first and second inning, Peterson was cruising respectively. Like I said, obviously he wasn't the sharpest because he didn't have a ton of his swing and miss stuff. It was just a lot more, ground balls and flyouts. But I mean, yeah, once it got to the bases loaded spot, someone should have been up. But I mean, at that point, also it was too late. And also, it's also just down to Pearson not being able to execute. Like I said, in that spot with Jake Cronenworth leading off that inning, once you have him 2 out 2 strikes, you can't hit him. And then like I said, he walks Tatis. The bunt single by Arise is annoying, and then gets behind Machado, challenges him, but just throws him the wrong pitch in my opinion. And Machado does what Machado does. This is why he's one of the better elite bats in this game, and he took advantage of Peterson being behind in the count, and he crushed the curveball to left field to hit that grand slam. It's just, listen, it's just, again, with Peterson, you can't make dumb mistakes like that, because especially against that Padres lineup and especially against, other better lineups in Major League Baseball, you make those kind of mistakes, they're going to come back to bite you in the ass. Brent, again, look at San Diego, took Pivetta out in the 5th when the Mets were threatening. I mean, yes, but also let's not forget, the Padres also have a much better bullpen than us, so they can afford to go to they can afford to go through their bullpen early when they see the starter struggling. I mean, listen, for right now with the Mets bullpen, I mean, pretty much in terms of who I trust, it's Diaz, it's Tyler Rogers, and it's Brooks Raley. Other than that, I don't trust Helsley, I don't trust Stanek, I don't trust Gregory Soto. And I mean, yeah, and then obviously, Dom Hamill's in this bullpen, but Dom Hamill, in this game, he made his major league debut. Obviously, I don't trust him much either, because obviously I didn't see him, pitch until today. So listen, the Padres could afford to do that because they have a bullpen that you trust. And listen, I get that the bullpen was fresh and it was sharp, or it was fresh because they haven't been used in 2 days. But also, it's like, like let's say you lose. I mean, you use all your high leverage guys in this spot, and then it gets late into the game, and then you have to start throwing guys out like Stanek and Helsley. It's like, do you trust them per se? Because I don't. But it's the situation, and it's like I said, it's the situation the Mets are dealt with right now. Obviously, maybe if Stearns got better relievers, or maybe if Ryan Helsley just decided that he could actually pitch up to a standard, maybe this wouldn't be so much of a problem. But again, these are the cards that we are dealt with at this current moment. And also, let's not forget, the Mets are in the spot where they feel like they have to win every single game, because again, they've had 3 separate 6 or more game losing streaks throughout the season. Not good enough. And when you do that and you blow, and because again, this was at a point, and Evan keeps reemphasizing this because this is important. The Mets at one point in the season were 21 games over 500. Now they're only 4. So again, they have no one to blame but themselves. But Brent, again, Mendoza blunder again. Yeah, I mean, Mendy just doesn't make great decisions. I mean, it is what it is at this point. Like, it's not worth getting frustrated over because it's like you just expect it to happen at these points, and they're predictable. Are we back to reality now? I mean, we pretty much have been in reality. I mean, listen, could the Mets get into the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. But there's also a very good chance that they could miss the playoffs. I think we're all pretty much in reality here. It's just, it is what it is. No, like I said, no one else to blame but themselves. But yeah, what is going on? Well, my computer's. Oh, sorry guys, my thing is starting to cut out. Okay, come on. Apologies guys for the blunders here. I need to upgrade and get a freaking PC at this point because freaking streaming on this laptop, it's like hell. I mean, it was garbage yesterday doing that hockey stream that we did covering the Rangers, but it's the fact that it's acting up again, it's not great. But Brent, again, we need to play desperate until we clinch a playoff spot. Absolutely. Uh, Brent with commenting a lot. I mean, I do like it. Thank you for being active in the chat, and thank you for supporting us, and thank you for staying long through this post game stream. But yeah, same mistakes all the time. And look at Pearson for the last 200%. On the positive side, Mullins needs to be in center field. Oh, hold on. Center field, let me restart. On the positive side, Mullins needs to be in center every day for now. I believe if he plays, he'll gain confidence. If McNeil needs to start going the other way, he's pull happy. I mean, listen, I mean, to be fair on that point, I think McNeil has been better when he's been more pull happy because you even start to see it this year, and even like towards the end of last year when McNeil started pulling the ball and he started hitting for more power, you start to see McNeil look like a better hitter than he had been, especially in the 2023 season and earlier on in last year's season. And listen, I get that everyone loved watching McNeil, especially like the 2018, 2019, 2022 version of McNeil where we won the batting title. But unfortunately, like slap ball hitters like that, they're just not very valuable in Major League Baseball today unless you're hitting 300 or over 300. And McNeil, especially the last couple of years, his batting average has started to drop down. So, but he was able to fix that because he started implementing the power into his game. So I don't have a problem with McNeil per se being pull happy. I actually quite like that. And listen, obviously you can't always pull the ball. There's certain situations and there's certain pitches that get delivered to you where you have to take the ball to the opposite field. But I don't have a problem with McNeil being pull happy. I think he's a better hitter when he's being pull happy per se. But that is your opinion at the end of the day. So you obviously entitled to your own opinion there, Brent. And then on the Mullins one, I mean, it's kind of hit or miss because I don't trust Mullins offensively, and I mean defensively he's been okay. He's had some bad games in center field. My biggest problem with Mullins in center field is the guy has a fucking noodle of an arm. I mean, the guy cannot throw anyone out from the outfield. But like I said, you're obviously entitled to your own opinion. I personally thought Mendoza should have left Mullins into hit in the ninth inning, but moving forward, Vientos and Beatty and Mullins should be in the lineup. Yeah, I don't agree with letting Mullins hit in the ninth inning. Listen, I get that he walked in the seventh inning, but I trust at that point late in the game, I want more of a proven power hitter in the lineup. And yeah, I thought going to Vientos there was the right decision. Obviously, like I said, I would have went to him earlier in the game. I would have went to him in the seventh inning, but Mendoza did it, and it's just in the ninth inning, Vientos simply didn't execute. It was the right move, but it's just sometimes players don't execute, and that's what happened with Vientos in that spot. I did feel the Mets did show fight tonight. I mean, they showed fight, but again, it's like it's cool that you're showing fight, but eventually you have to be able to show that you're capable of coming over, late or you have to be able to show that you're able to come through when you're down late in games. And again, the fact that they're the only team this year that has not had a win when they come into the ninth inning trailing and they're 0-65 in that situation, it's not a good look for this team. Especially like I said, when they were so good at having a lot of comeback wins last year. That is a very disappointing aspect of this team, and I don't think anyone can deny that. FYI, I've been here before, but only started recently. Oh, okay then. But as I said before, always nice to have you on the show, and we obviously want new people joining us and interacting in the chat. Adorable Snowflake again. If we make the playoffs, I can't see us being the Dodgers in LA. Our away record is woeful. I mean, yeah, that is a big problem. Our away record is not good. But I mean, look. Also, to be fair, the Mets have also played the Dodgers well this year. I mean, they played 7 games this year. they took the season series. Obviously, they took 2 out of 3 here at Citi Field, and then they ended up splitting it in LA 2-2. But I mean, listen, 3 games set, anything could happen, right? Do I think the Mets are favored in that series? No, absolutely not. The Dodgers are a much better team than they are, but let's not forget the Dodgers are also vulnerable this year. They have not had a great regular season as well. I mean, for all that talent that they have, they only have 82, 83 wins. So, compared to the standard that we expected the Dodgers, they have underwhelmed this year in the regular season. But like I always say, come playoff time, whenever the first pitch of game 1 happens, whatever happened the past 6 months of the regular season, it's irrelevant. When the playoffs start, it's a whole new season. And whichever team gets hot at the right moment, that is usually the team that goes on to win the World Series. Brent, again, sad that Tong is now under pressure tomorrow as Mets need to win. 100%. Game shorts for you. What is going on? Pearson single-handedly lost on this game tonight. He's been their worst pitcher since August 6th. I mean, yeah, it's debatable. It's been debatable because, I mean, Senga has been great. Minaya in the games where he started, he hasn't been great. Obviously, Holmes, I don't think he's been terrible, but he just hasn't given the team length. But, I mean, you could very easily put a, debate towards that Pearson has been their worst pitcher since August 6th. And it's disappointing because, like I said, he had a very good first half. He started off the second half pretty well. It's just the fact that, again, like 2022, that he's just fallen short. It's disappointing. Evan, and that's only half of Tyler Rogers because he can't come in with men on base. Yeah, good point. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And game shorts for you. No ninth inning comebacks after having the most last year. Disgusting. Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not a good look. But actually there is a couple more. Game shorts for you. Adorable Snowflake. Most likely they will not beat LA at the same time, though. LA has also been absolutely pathetic this year. If Tanner Scott is starter every game, they might have a chance. I mean, yeah. Tanner Scott also, he has not had a good year this year, after signing that 4-year deal in the offseason. I'm a huge Mets fan. Also, a Canadian on the West Coast. Wow. If you don't mind me asking, what part of Western Canada are you from? Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary? I would like to know. But yeah, it's nice to see that. Yeah, you're a Mets fan. Well, a Canadian Mets fan living on the West Coast. That is nice. Game shorts for you. Marlins will be the pest last year. I already know it. They always have been, which is why they find ways to always be better than they should be, more successful than the Phillies and the Mets all the time. Yeah, the Marlins are always a pest on our side for whatever reason. It's been like that, going back to 07, 08, and even the 2022 season, right late in that series. You have to have that crazy game by Eduardo Escobar, for the Mets to win that game. So the Marlins just always give us tough games and problems. Good points. I understand what you're saying. I'm just throwing out ideas. No, absolutely. And like I said, I have no problem. I like being interactive with you guys. So the more points you guys have, obviously throw that out because obviously like to interact here. And the longer the post game streams are, which I'm not going to complain about. I can see us being anyone's down to starting pitching. Listen, I mean, if everything goes right, and if the offense clicks and the pitchers actually pitch up to the standard, yeah, the Mets probably could beat anyone in Major League Baseball. It's just we've seen that this team is inconsistent, and they've gone through stretches and periods of time where things haven't been able to click at a consistent rate. And that's why we've seen them, again, have 3 stretches this season where they've lost 6 or more games in a row. And that's the first time that's happened since 1980. So yes, while they're capable of beating anyone, they're also capable of losing to everybody. And let's not forget, like I've always said, like this is a trait of this Mets team. They are capable of playing down the competition. And let's not forget, and this is not to slander the 2024 team because I love the team from last year, but let's not forget that was also a trait of last year's team. They played down the competition as well. They did. There were a lot of close games against the Rockies last year. The Mariners last year, which they weren't great, they got swept by them in Seattle, and then they had a 3-game set against the A's at Citi Field, and they ended up losing that series 2 out of 3. So, yeah, it's not a great shit to have. 7-6 against the Phillies and 4-3 against LA. Hopefully, carry that over to the playoffs and get hot. Yeah, it's all about getting hot in the playoffs, but firstly, the Mets need to get to the playoffs. And any word on Torrens' timeline to return? He was actually reinstated today from the injured list. Yeah, he was a bench option today. So he could have came into the game and hit. And they sent Sanger down today or they sent Sanger back to AAA today before the game today. Yeah, that was that update I believe came in around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock today. So yeah, Terens is back off the IL. And you are from Victoria, BC. Oh, nice, British Columbia. That is British Columbia is a very nice place. I do end up on visiting Vancouver eventually because that is a very nice city. And obviously maybe catch a Canucks game or not maybe I definitely would want to catch a Canucks game as well. Giovanni Martinez, what is going on? Peterson needs to change himself. Absolutely, Peterson, like I said, did not have a good game. But yeah. Anyway, guys, nice little long post game show here. 45 minutes. Almost at 46 minutes. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Obviously, like I said before, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe on the channel. We greatly appreciate you guys' support here on the channel. Also, hit the notification bells as well to let you guys know anytime we upload a video or go live on the channel. But that's going to be it for me. Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously see tomorrow what happens. Mets got to win. They have to win the series tomorrow. And naturally, after tomorrow, there will be a post-game show to break down the game. But anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you for thank you for you guys who tuned in, and yeah, peace, baby. Let's go Mets.